welcome to episode 2 of the LIV DEX Show. We'll give everybody a few minutes to log in. We'll start at 7 o'clock sharp, but looking forward to this episode and excited about just sharing with the world, sharing with the basketball community, and looking forward to, I think more than anything, God put us together, man, to just help the world, man, especially in basketball. It's amazing how our relationship has grown, and, it's perfect. So excited for this episode.
It's perfect, Randy. I'm the oldest and you're the youngest, so, I guess that makes me the OG. But, relying on one another's experiences in different situations, and I think that's going to kind of lead us into what we're going to talk about tonight. I've been at the high school level longer than you have, and I think our question and answering and inquiring with one another comes from my experiences in just being in high school ball with all the rules, the LHSAA, and all the different things that when you first came in, I know we talk a lot about the different rulings and what can be done, what can't be done, in order for you to get started in year one over at Newman High School. And man, I'm glad I was able to answer your questions. And if I couldn't, I was going to find the answer. One thing about it, if I don't know the answer, somebody does.
No, definitely. So we'll let a few audience members come in. And just if you missed last week's episode, I'm Coach Randy Livingston, head basketball coach at Newman High School. I've coached on the professional level. I've coached college level. I've coached grassroots level at high elite level. And this was my first year at Newman, and we had a successful season. And I'll let Coach Watch introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Coach Dexter Washington, a native of Opelousas, Louisiana, here at Hamilton Christian School in Lake Charles, Louisiana. I've been involved with basketball, basically coaching at some aspect all my life. I had a very well developed travel circuit team. I had a great, started out in the middle school, worked my way up to as an assistant in high school. And for the last 8 years, I've had my own program. And, we've had successes and we've had failures, but in the midst of all that, we've always stayed strong.
No, that's good. We can get started. I would let the old guy go first, but you can get into it and ask me, and then at the end of this, probably 30, 35, 40 minutes, then we'll open it up to some questions at the end. If you guys have some questions, make sure at the bottom in the question mark down in the tab, make sure you click on it, and then we'll try to get to everybody's questions at the end of this. So
it's on me. Yeah, Randy, we the topic tonight, I think toward the end of last week, we started talking about we knew at what we're doing, and, we've had some good feedback across the world, really, because you deal with the people in Australia quite a bit, and you have programs all across the United States. And we talked about, let's start with phase one. If you're going to be a coach, how do you build a program at the high school level? Or any level, in fact. But since it's you and I, let's talk about, Randy, you just completed year one of your program. Year one, this is perfect. You're the first year high school coach. Tell us, what was it like to build the program? Either was it already successful, or where were you when you first walked through the door?
Well, I was lucky because I was able, first of all, to come to Newman in the 8th grade, coach the middle school program, but really was blessed to be able to see the program 30,000 feet above, and that really gave me a good opportunity to kind of move in slowly and figure out what the things that I liked, what things I didn't like, what things I knew needed to be changed, and really how to move forward. And I'll say this before I really get into that. I want to touch on this, and this is just for every young coach, really starting a program, or before you even start talking about taking a job and being a head coach, because it's a heck of a responsibility. These are some questions that I asked myself before I took the job, and I think everybody should ask themselves. When you're talking to, whether it's administrator, whether it's AD, whether it's the president, whether it's the head of school, whatever, really once you get into it, you want to really talk about how will this affect your family. You know, these are just some things for young coaches. It's important. You know, will you have the support of the school administration, faculty, and community? These things are like vital. Do you have passion for the game? Do I have the energy, the desire, and a good help to take this on? Like, am I in a good space? You know, another question I ask myself is, what will I get from doing this? How will this benefit me? These are important. They're real serious questions that you have to ask yourself. What can I give to others by doing this? What are my priorities and goals? What's important? What is my coaching philosophy? And if they got any young coaches, you know, listening tonight, or even some veteran coaches, even some older coaches, you know, these questions that I just asked myself, and it's what I asked myself before I took the job at Newman, is not meant to scare you away. You just need to know if you are dedicated, or you're a dedicated coach that's willing to help young people down the right path while teaching the game of basketball. And all those questions, if you answer them in a positive way, or you could answer them not only positive, but be truthful, then you'll get the answer that you want, and you'll know that you're a match for this time and place where you are in your career. Dexter asked me that question. I guess beginning two is like, step one is taking over a program. Are you taking over for a living legend that has a successful program? Are you taking over from a team that was struggling? All of those things you got to look at when you start, you know, building a program. For me, I was taking over for, you know, an icon in coaching and Coach Tillett at Newman. That made my situation a little bit different. Also, it made my situation a little different. I'm coaching at my alma mater. Last time I left there playing, the expectations was out of the roof. So, you know, you got to kind of control that way. And I remember, you know, talking to my brother when we took the job. He gave me some really good advice. He said, make sure you don't look at that jersey on the wall. And my jersey been retired there, because that doesn't matter now. You know, and I tried to get that to the team. So, like, taking over for someone like Tillett, you might feel a little bit more pressure to win. You might feel a little bit more pressure to, like, you know, am I going to keep his system? Because that's what the players know. And Tillett had an intricate system. He ran the Princeton passing game. He ran the Princeton offense. And those guys was, you know, he had X's on the floor. So the guys were robots. They ran to a certain spot. You know, where I came from, a different thing, a different style. I've coached in I've been around pro coaches. I've been around college coaches. Like I said, I've been overseas coaches. So I've kind of put that together. You know, like they might have never played zone under Tillett. You know, there's a lot of different things that go into it. But at the end of the day, there are advantages to taking over from someone like Tillett too, because the kids were well coached. You know, they were fundamentally sound, and then they knew how to work. So I just had to come in and do what I know best. For a young coach that's coming in, maybe taking over from a program that's not being good, those situations are good because there's less pressure, you know, for immediate success. Hopefully the administration will give you some time, and the school and community, you know, they must know that things usually do not improve in one season. So you have time, and hopefully they give you a commitment. For me, the next thing that was on the docket for me to building a program is, you know, what was my basketball coaching philosophy? And amazing, this is where it was good for me. I pretty much have kept the coaching philosophy and tweaked it a little bit in terms of from when I played for the great coach Billy Fitzgerald. You know, so my coaching philosophy was impact. When I did my interview, the AD asked for a coaching philosophy, and I stuck by those principles. I still think, you know, defense wins championships. I feel like offensively, if you can stop people from scoring in transition, you can win. I feel like if you can get all five guys back and you make them play against your half-court defense, you have a better chance. And then I went into offense after that, and that's how I teach the game. Then I go into transition offense, and then half-court offense. So those are the four phases that I've always been taught and learned to do. And so that's, you know, my coaching philosophy. You know, I had it intact, so I kind of knew what I wanted to do. But whatever your style is, you must have your own system. You know, teach the system all the way through your program, including the junior varsity and the freshman level. but don't be overbearing. Allow the coaches to use some of their own plays too that you do, especially JV as they're learning. But the one thing that I just learned from, I went to John Curtis. People don't know that and played football. Well, the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade run the same system that JT runs on the varsity. So I think that's important. You got to align all, if you have a middle school program or if you have feeder school programs, go and find out what those coaches are doing, but then try to implement your culture so when the kids get to you, they're ready. I'll stop there. Actually, you know what? I got one more important thing that I think is super important, and then I'm going to throw it back to Dexter here, is I learned this the hard way in my first head coaching job in Boise, Idaho. Selecting your coaching staff and assistants and creating an organization is the hardest thing in the world for a young coach, because you don't really understand, selecting your coaches. Basically, I'll give you one: people that you can trust. That was the most important thing in my criteria for putting a staff together. There's all kind of people that are great. There's many coaches out here that are trying to become the best. But there got to be people that you can trust. Trust is important. I had some on my staff in Idaho that I could trust, and they knew who they was. And then there was some people that I found out later on wasn't trustworthy, and that hurt, because you think when you hire somebody, they have your best interest at heart, and it didn't. But hiring assistant coaches is crucial to building a program, because you're with them every day. You got to be able to trust them. They got to be competent. They got to be able to, if you get kicked out of a game, they got to be able to be you. They got to be able to see the same message and not try to bring their own message. They got to continue to be the same, and be a seamless transition if you get kicked out of the game. If you get sick or you miss practice, you got to have trust and faith in them and know that they can, run a practice like you would like it to run. And some things you take for granted, you don't know until it'll be amazing. Some of you high school coaches out there, if you just put a camera up on the top and you miss practice and you let your assistant coach run and he doesn't know you're watching, it'll be amazing some of the things that you see. And so I'm not saying spy on the coaches, but if it's not exactly how you would run it, got some issues. They can put their own style on it, but the teachings, the fundamentals, the player development, the system that you have intact, they should be teaching the same way. And if not, we got issues. So these are just some of the things, and I have a glut of list of things that I can go over, but these are sort of the beginning phases of building a program that I think is vital to your success. And I had to deal with it right off the bat and following the legend like Coach Tillett, figuring out, identifying what system I want to run. And the craziest thing about most coaching, you can have everything in your mind, that system that you really want to run, and then all of a sudden you get into the season and it's not what's best for your players. So then you have to change. So you have to be flexible in your style. And so that's important. All right, I'll turn it over. I was in the beginning program, but then now you have a veteran coach, Dexter, who's been in high school basketball and been around basketball for a very long time. I would like for you to share, how much, that you really, in building the program where you are now. Like, tell me the difference and tell some of these coaches the difference.
You took me way back, man, to year one, really. Here's the thing for me. Being that lead assistant guy for a long time, I was an assistant coach for people for a long time, longer time than I've been a head coach. The times that I spent as a head coach was circuit ball. And the different level of talent, you got great basketball players. You throw the ball out there and you just teach them a little small system, and, they're the talented guys that's going to college. But when I was appointed, my first job, but one of the things that I did throughout my whole career was I always visioned being a head coach. And in that process, I was saying some of the things I would take from this guy, from that guy. And of course, you have your own personality. And the things fundamentally that I was learning about the game, the things that I already knew about the game, the styles that different people use with their players, it was almost like building a puzzle. I was taking pieces of the puzzle from everywhere I went. And even today, I still take pieces of the puzzle. And finally, when you're in control of the puzzle, and this is what it was like to start my program, I became in control now. So all those things that I had visualized, all those things that was a dream, you know, to have my own program. And one of the things I didn't tell myself that I was going to have the best program in the world. In my mind, I wanted that, but I knew step one, I always went back to the guys I played ball for and the guy that gave me my first coaching job. And I always asked them questions before I made a decision. You know, it's easier to take a job and think every decision you make was right. Well, I hadn't been on the job long enough to think I knew exactly every decision that I make was right. I was an assistant coach. I was an assistant coach for longer than I was a head coach. Assistant coaches talk to the head coach and give them some suggestions. Well, now it changed for me. Year one over at Hamilton, when I first got appointed to the job, it was probably in April prior to summer league. And the basketball program there was struggling. The basketball coach there, I wasn't his assistant coach. He felt like he didn't need me, so I was a basketball official. So I was still around the game, and I was still learning different things from coaches throughout the state. That was one advantage I had, Randy, was I refereed basketball, and I was able to see players and coaches and style throughout the entire state of Louisiana. I also traveled to Florida to officiate AAU basketball. So those things helped me more as a coach than anything. And then finally, when I went out to help, got the job, summer basketball started, and I didn't have no basketball player. I mean, it was like, throw the ball out and let's see what we have out here. And honestly, in basketball, what I look at today versus what I started out with 8 years ago, I had a football team that came play basketball. I was at a little small school where the kids play all sports. And you said it earlier, assistant coaches. I had to find some guys that, number one, understood me. I'm built a little bit differently. Not a know-it-all, but a little bit more intensified. And one of the first guys I hired was my son. And it was real easy with him because he played in the system I had. And then there was another guy who was a former head coach that I hired him. And there was another guy that was at the school. So we collectively met and we had a vision. We developed a coaching vision. And once we developed the vision, the first thing we had to do was, number one, we had to identify who was going to be that guy on our basketball team. You know, the way we started, we didn't have that guy. But we did have one guy who turned out to be a hell of a college football player. And he was a big post guy, and I loved the post game. And we went out, man, Randy, and we started out the first year 0-14. Stay positive. You're dealing with what we're building a program. If you hear, I'll say this to anybody that's listening. If you ever get your first job and you take it to just go win, you're not going to be there very long. Because the desire to win will oversee the desire to build a program. Always build a program first in year one. Don't expect much in year one. And if you exceed your expectation, then wow, you've sold something to not only your school, but you sold something to the community you're in. And that's exactly the way it played out for me in Hamilton. 0-14, gone into a district. We're 1A basketball team. I lost several kids to eligibility around January. We wasn't picked to finish nowhere in district, but we went to practice every day. And one of the things I always did was encourage my kids and keep them encouraged. And they really played hard, and they played hard. They practiced hard. And, you know, we play games like we was 10-0 or 14-0. And one thing I always told my kids in year one, and I still do today, win, lose, or draw, we're going to pop off that bench and we're going to shake the opponent's hand, because one thing about it, we'll be back. That was the end of every game. Win, lose, or draw, we're going to make sure we were humble. And when you're losing and you're 0-14, Randy, you got a lot of humble pie in your face, you know. So finally, we turned the corner in district. District wasn't very strong, and the kids were a little bit more confident. Well, needless to say, fast forward, this was the beginning of my program, and I'll tell you some steps that I took step by step. We ended up on the road playing a team that had just come off a district championship the year before, and we were all tied, and we were on the road. We went in their gym, and we won a district championship in year one. Did we build the program then? I don't know if we built it, but what we did was we did what's most important. We laid a foundation, not only for our basketball, but for our school and for the community that we was on watch. And in the process of that, man, I'll tell you some things that I think is vitally important for anybody that's taking over a first-year program. One, find out who is that player, especially if you're in your first year. Unless you're walking into a program that's full of players, find out who is that player, who is that guy. The second thing I always did was I spent a lot of time with my players away from basketball, which I think is probably the most important thing when you take a job. Get to know your players, get to know their personality, get to know their home, get to know everything. Is almost like doing an investigation before you even throw the ball out. Because at the end of the day, you got all these personalities and you have to blend into yours and as one. Tough call, but you have to know how to play that game with them. And, you take them to your event, have barbecue, always keep them encouraged, and even before practice, spend a little time with them, telling them quotes or giving them some encouraging things, even before you throw the ball out there. And you'll know you're gravitating to their attention. Make sure they know you care about it. Number three, as a coach, make sure your success is a process. That's what I was talking about earlier. You got to make sure your success is a process. You can't go in there and expect to win right away, especially if it's a new program, again, unless you have stud. Because you have to implement your culture. The next thing, develop a program, not a team. The team follows the program. Once you establish your program, which I call your culture, then you have established what your team will be in and year out. Communicate with your administration. Make sure your administration is on board. Explain to them your philosophy. Explain to them your style. Explain to them your expectation. And if your administration is on board, now you can go back to your players and you can coach them the way you know how to coach them. The next thing is bring along coaches who are loyal. That's important. You talked about it earlier, man. Loyalty. What I see a lot of today is head coaches hiring friends or hiring buddies, and those buddies are talking to their buddies who may not be buddies of the coach, and they're talking behind your back about what they would do if they was the head coach. And that brings about to dissension. I've been blessed, and I can say this, and I'm sure they talk about me. They just don't talk about it to people that'll get back to me. But I've always had a loyal group. And when you have former players that play for you, unless they got an ego, they're going to always remain loyal because you gave them an opportunity, but you also showed them how to play the game as well. Something I don't do, but I always say for this first year, celebrate your successes. Celebrate your success. I don't do it today. I let my kids and my parents celebrate that. My celebration of successes in my program today, 8 years later, is what happened to my kids 5 years after they graduate. Those become my successes. Start having youth camps. Start being in the community. You've got to have a personality as a coach. Whether your first year, second year, you got to build a relationship with parents. You got to build that type of relationship with your kid. So, to put it in a nutshell, Randy, those were the steps that I saw happen to me as a player. Those were the steps that happened to me when I was my first year assistant coach. Yep. And I watched how these coaches interacted with everybody. And today, I'll say this, celebrate your successes. 8 years later, we've been a part of every district championship. This past season was the first time we hadn't won a district championship. 8 years later, we've been to every playoff game. 7 of the 8 years, we've been to the quarterfinals. 4 of those 8 years, we've been to the state semifinals. And 1 of those 8 years, we've been to a state championship game. And recently, we've been to 4 consecutive Final Four. 1 state championship game. We hadn't won the ring, but at the end of the day, all that started from an 0-14 team, relationship with administration, to where we are today. And that was the building blocks of Hamilton basketball. We have a culture today.
Amazing.
More than I could even share to you and tell you some stories, man. And it's like one thing in the area I'm in, you know, I'm a small private school, costs money to go there. We're a blue collar school, so the one thing that's amazing about it, it was how I built a culture that became attractive to the entire community. So we would get people that were basketball players only, that wasn't having success at other places, that saw the things that was happening with our school that became attractive to our program. And parents became attractive. The other thing, Randy, when you start out on the middle school level, those are your biggest supporters. And if they got cousins and little nephews or whatever, and they played under you and with you, they're going to always funnel kids your way. And I've been really blessed because within our school, we have a good middle school program. We don't win games because we develop fundamentals. I tell the middle school coaches all the time, it doesn't matter if you win a game, there's no championship. But if you can make a left-hand layup, a right-hand layup, we winning and take a charge.
No, that's facts. I mean, that's amazing stuff. I want to go back just for the coaches, especially the young coaches out there, just about, you know, assistant coaches and selecting them. Man, it's so important to surround yourself with good people who share the same coaching philosophy, the same passion for the game, and are knowledgeable. And I can't overstate this, understate it, whatever. Above all, they should be loyal and want to help you be successful. I hired my first assistant coach. I've been knowing him for a long time, for like 10 to 15 years. And in my phone, I have his name, and under his name, and I don't know why I put it when we first met after spending some time with him. If I ever got a head coaching job, hire Travis. And the most important thing I like with that is because he's loyal. Hard worker, he's loyal. Hard worker, loyal. That's so, so important. The other thing, you know, that before I, you know, get off assistant coaches, these are the little people that make so much of a difference. You know, you need assistants and you need managers. Nowadays, managers, they make the program go. People don't understand how important managers are. They're the people that, you know, I know in high school, some guys wash your uniform, but if you get a good manager and you start breeding good managers, you'll always have them. You know what I'm saying? And that's something that you don't know. You just gotta get that. That's important. These are like the building blocks and foundation. And sometimes we forget them. We take it for granted, but they're the most important, you know, pieces to a program. And then my second hire was a guy that I really knew because I played with him, and I knew he had work ethic. And when I was looking at my staff, I'm a little bit older. Unless the guys make me mad, I'm not getting out there on the court with them. But if they make me mad, I might bust them up for a little bit. But the most important thing is I needed to find somebody that was younger that can still challenge the guys if I needed to challenge my two better players. Because the one thing in high school athletics, you don't know if you're going to have great players, you don't know if you're going to have a great bench, but you want a competitive environment, but you want people that can challenge. And Ronell played for UAB, played for Mike Anderson. So that's all he ever knew was to play hard. So to bring him in with all the basketball knowledge, you know, that was important to me. So I had a great staff, and then it took me a while to find a manager, but I found one, and I think that's vital, important. I wanted to go back there, but I want to now, you know, move on to some other things that I think are super important. Everybody today now I want to say you need to have a player development coach. You need to have I just call it, you need to develop your talent. It doesn't matter if you're the head coach, assistant coach, manager, second assistant coach. You need to develop your players and develop a work ethic. For me, I was taught by great coaches, Coach Fitz, who I talked about in the first episode, Coach William Robinson. Teaching fundamentals is important. If you have the fundamentals and a good work ethic, your team will improve. It may not improve as fast as you would like, but eventually they will get there. But then that trickles down to the middle school team, the ninth grade team. You know, I believe, you know, 70 to 80% of the practice should be devoted to learning fundamentals. As the kids get older and you got a senior leading team and you got some veteran players, maybe the percentages change a little bit, but that's important. But planning practices are vital. All that stuff is important. Each player and coach owes it to the other practice and plays as hard as they can, he or she. Because if you got some girls coaches out there, I'm speaking to everybody. And, players must be willing to work in the off season and be developed that discipline. One of the things I came up with this year for my team, which was important, and it's on the wall in my office, and it was one of the first things in terms of Dexter talk about culture. I have on my wall, believe, achieve. And I talked about it a lot in my tweets. I talked about it every day with my players. Because Newman hadn't been to the quarterfinals or semifinals in a long time. So I had to get the guys to first believe in the coaching staff, believe in themselves, believe in the message that we were giving them, and then we can achieve things. And that was my motto the whole year for them. Because once you start believing and you start feeling it, we had a tough schedule in the beginning of the season on purpose because I needed to let them know in order to get where I think we can get to, these are some of the teams you got to go to. And if you don't believe that you can beat them, or if you don't believe that you can get to the state championship and give yourself a chance to win it, then what are we doing it here for? And Dexter said, in your first year, he didn't really say you shouldn't have high expectations. You should, celebrate your successes. But for me, I put it on myself because I feel like if you start talking about it, the players will understand it eventually. And it clicked. So we didn't necessarily say we needed to win a state championship. We just wanted to improve every game and get better and continue to work every day. And so that was important to me. And, that falls in line to the next topic for me in terms of building programs, just changing attitudes. I did that when I started talking about believe, achieve. The attitude of the whole team, changed. We became tougher. I mean, I saw Coach Nate on here from Carver. I mean, we played a tough schedule. We went to Dexter tournament. Showdown Lake was one of the toughest tournaments. We played tough teams. We played in the Booker T tournament against Carver. We played in the Sugar Bowl Classic because it wasn't like these younger guys and some of these, we won all smoke. We didn't necessarily want all smoke. I just wanted to see what the best had to offer. And if I got the kids to realize that they could play with them, and some of them we beat, they would start to buy into the program and what we were selling. And I'll never forget, I had my assistant coach, Coach Russell, always said, we're not going to stop. So either they're going to start believing in it today, or every day we do it, eventually they're going to believe in it because we were never going to let up. And that's sort of what happened towards the end of the year. We gave ourselves a chance to have a special season. Came up short, but it was an awesome season. But changing of attitude takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of patience. Because you got to imagine all of the young players today. I had 5 freshmen on the varsity team this year. They all had delusions of whatever. The kids today, they all think they know it all. They all think they've had a better coach somewhere or this where, and they might have. But at the end of the day, I had to change their attitudes from the work ethic, change what they perceived as good basketball, which they played in AAU in middle school. Now this is varsity. So, getting that buy-in was incredibly important for us. And it took a while. And I think by the end of the season, I thought we had it. It took a lot longer than I thought. But that word patience again. You got to have patience with your team and you got to know your team. And I think I got that. And I think I got them to change attitude. Now, the next thing I want to talk about just building the legacy, and after we beginning to get some success during the season, we battled some teams. We came up short in a couple games, but we battled. The most important thing for me is we lost to a great Carver team, by the way. And then Coach Nate was like, man, how do you get those guys to play that hard the whole game when you were down 10, when you were down 12? They never battled. We wound up losing by 3 or 4. They never quit. Well, luckily I had a good senior in Max Moses who played his tail out. But then building the legacy and getting them to buy in and getting them to understand that there's only one way to do this, and that's to play hard. I'll turn it back over to you, Dex, because I want to give you some time. But there's 2 topics that I'll leave some of the coaches with, because I know time is of essence. Make sure you set a goal at the beginning of the season. I thought it was important. My goal was to win a state championship. I never let up with that, and I won't let up till we are successful at doing that. But some coaches in your first year program, it depends on what team you have. If you have to build it, maybe setting the goal to be 500. Nothing wrong with that. Setting the goal to, make the playoffs when the school hadn't made it in a while. There's nothing wrong with that. And the last thing, just for all the younger coaches out there, and this one, I know, Coach Dex, you can talk about these 2 more than anything else. Maintaining a sense of balance. That's the most important thing in coaching. If you can maintain a sense of balance, it'd be fine. And I'll leave this one coach, Coach Al McGuire. I always keep coaching. I kind of keep him handy for this. Don't let coaching become your mistress. Like, maintain balance in your life, and don't always choose basketball over family and everything else. And the one thing this pandemic has showed us, family is important. And so, it kind of forced us basketball coaches to, have a little bit more balance. I know a lot of us are doing a lot more stuff around the house, cooking, picking up some habits that you don't normally get to do when you're in your normal grind. I mean, and we talk about this all the time, Dex. You went from a state championship to AAU on the road for the next thing you know, school started. It's a grind. It's a long season, but we got to maintain balance. And a lot of times people see my stuff on Facebook. My family, we like traveling. I like doing stuff with my family. And that's a lot of times it gives you a chance to get away and enjoy life, but maintain some of the balance. And then remember that these are high school and middle school kids and parents. They may not be as passionate as you are, but, as a young young coach, you can be strong. I was intense. I probably was overbearing at the beginning, but at the same time, allow them to be kids and have balance in their own lives. That is super, super important. Go ahead, Dex.
Randy, you something that's also, you touched on was the balance. But 8 years later, man, I don't have to go to practice until it's game plan. That's the development of coaches. That started in the beginning. In the beginning, I had to do everything. I had to be hands-on. I had to set the tempo. It's kind of like in the game. You always have to have a guy that's going to set the tempo. When I first took over, I set the tempo. My coaches had to follow my lead. And over a period of time, I was able, 8 years from now, you'll be able to do like me, Randy. You'll be able to go to practice and sit down and just watch. You have a set over here, a set over here, and you have coaches doing everything. And they'll begin now starting to implement things for the modern day basketball player. Things that they implement is new to me because I'm from the old school. I know the system I run today is the system I learned when I played ball. And Leonard Washington played for me in middle school, went on to have a career at USC in Wyoming and overseas. He sent me a message all the time, same system, different faces. And I've always had that philosophy because the philosophy for me, what I established from the first day I set foot on there, we're going to stop people from scoring. I didn't have anybody can score, so we had to work more on the defensive end. That became our culture. We weren't a team that was real big. Our culture was, and our motto in our gym is very simple, 4 quarters in your face. We're going to get out there, win, lose, or draw. The bottom line is what I tell kids in a program. At the end of the game, we just want to make sure they look across at us, win or lose, and say, man, you got to play hard against these guys all the time. That is the legacy and culture of Hamilton basketball. Now, there's some other things that you have to do, I think, early on. You have to maintain some integrity as a coach. You gotta also teach your kids that it's nobody's fault but their own. Parents are different today than they were when I played. I watched Randy's team. I watched some of the things, and don't get it twisted. We didn't have a perfect situation. But I watch parents and their expectations of kids that we could sit back and don't see the same thing. And I had to learn, and I didn't adjust very well to Lil Johnny and the rest of the team. I've never adjusted to that. I don't think I ever will. Once you get your system in place and your culture, you got to have people that believe they can, number one, accept me as a coach. I'm not the sit down, I'm an in-your-face type of coach. And every one of my players that have come through me, not only as a head coach, but as an assistant, know what to expect from me. But the reason I can be in one of the things, the reason you can be whatever you want to be on that sideline is you have to build that relationship up with the kid. I don't know if a lot of parents like me, and it really doesn't matter, but the kids love me. And it's very, that's a battle that they're not going to win because I have the ball. And you know, but we all respect one another. And I had met a parent that don't think their kids should not play the whole game in my life. That's just reality. Times have changed. It's not about the team winning no more as much as it's about how many points he got and this and that. I can remember playing ball early on, and my mom would make me ride back with her, and I couldn't ride with my teammate if I didn't play to her expectation. It didn't matter what the coach expected. It didn't matter. There was a certain level of expectancy that she had on me, and it didn't have anything to do with points. It had a lot to do with her judging whether or not I played hard and I competed. And I'm a very competitive person, and that's the one thing I've implemented in my kids, that we're not afraid to play anybody. You know, we don't have a lot of size. We're a 1A school. We probably got 72 kids in our hallway, boys and girls, 9th grade through 12th. But we're not going to not schedule the big school. We're not going to not go to Randy's tournament with the 4A, 5A. That was also a part of our culture. And that was also a way to make your program attractive. What am I doing with my program versus what the programs in my area is doing? How do we travel? How do we dress? What's our culture? What's our style? What's the expectation? We go to church together. Those things build you, and then it makes parents begin to trust you more. And now you can be that coach that you want to be. But the last thing I'll tell you about the building of Hamilton, and I'm going to go back to a couple of things you said. I'm not married. Hope to be again one day. But I answer the phone at 1 and 2 in the morning for my players, and I'm going to leave my house. I don't know a lot of people do that, especially those that got parents. You know what you got, and that goes back to my beginning. Understand your kids. Understand their household. Understand their parents. And when you do, I have, everybody's household is not like mine. Everybody may not have the same thing. So if I want you to run through a wall for me, then I need to run through a wall for you away from the basketball court. So that now, when it's time to play basketball, I expect you to run through the wall, and you expect to run through the wall. It's real simple that way. But we've had success. Everybody's on the same page. It's not a perfect world at anywhere. It's not a perfect world in the NBA. Not a perfect world in the college. It's not a perfect world in high school. It's just not a perfect world. You're going to always have some issues, but your integrity and your character must supersede any win or loss that you have. And don't give your team a blame. Don't blame somebody.
Dex, hold that thought. Now I'm going to let you keep going. Guys, any questions you guys have about
it's about time.
or anything, we're welcome. Just make sure you just type on the question mark down there, type it in, and then I'll go through them all. So don't be afraid to ask questions. If you're a young coach out there, boys, girls, or if you're older coach, it doesn't matter. Just ask whatever question you want about building the program or about anything basketball related, and we'll do our very best to answer, because we got about 10 to 15 minutes to wrap up, but we want to open it up to a question answer sort of session, and and if we really invite anybody to ask whatever questions you may feel you need. I think this
it doesn't have to be on this particular topic, just basketball related. And Randy, a little bit off subject is here. One of the reasons you and I put this together, because the pandemic got us doing things that is not normal, and experiences. It's not about a better coach here, a better coach there. I know more than you, or you know more than this. It's all about, we getting on here and sharing our experiences. It's nothing. What worked for me might not work for you, but I do know there are certain things in order to have a successful program, and we all got that in common as a coach coming in. Foundation. You're not going to ever build a house without a foundation. Right?
No doubt. No, that was good. Any questions from anybody? Just type them up. We can go from there.
I'm looking for my buddy Donald Johnson, man. I saw him earlier. Matter of fact, I'm going to make the announcement now on tomorrow night. There's a Zoom Southwest Regional Coaches Association have a Zoom meeting at 7 o'clock. Todd Russ, if anybody knows Todd, we have had a Louisiana connection of coaches like we've never had before. And I think it's been helpful.
Coach Dex, we got one question came up, and keep them coming.
Let's see.
What type of culture, this is from Joe Lewis, native of New Orleans, played at St. Martin's, went to SMU, coached college. He said, what type of culture do you think brings more championships?
It's a good question. Yeah, that's a good question. I know one thing, I hadn't won a championship, so apparently the culture I got is but it's getting me there. I think the family-oriented culture for me, I'm going to speak for me and my experiences because we have been there 4 years in a row. We've yet to accomplish the final goal, but I think the family atmosphere and the interpersonal relationship that I have with my kids and the expectations that I place on them, not necessarily to win, but to compete at the highest level and challenge them, has been what has separated us and got us to be where we are today. Because, Randy, I tell you this all the time. Thibodeau, we lined up in Russ Tournament to play Thibodeau, and I'm looking at the team, and I'm looking at my team, and I go in there for 3 minutes, and we getting ready to give a pregame speech and say, here's the deal. They're bigger than us, they're stronger than us, and they're more athletic than us. But on paper, we don't have a chance. I say we got one thing that's in common with them. Which brain is going to win the game? And needless to say, man, that was probably one of the biggest wins of the year this year. They went up 13, and we came back and won that game. And those kids believed they could play the Lakers after that. And that's the culture we have. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yep, G, I'll try to chime in on it too. I think for me, of all of my experience playing for so many coaches throughout my career of playing, the culture that's built where you're tough on the kids, you show tough love, and you have the ability to wrap your arms around them and bring them up when they need to be brought up, is the best culture to me. So I think you have to be tough on the kids today, but then you got to know when to pull back. You got to know when to pull your arm around them, because one thing I think I learned more than anything else with this generation of kids, we have no idea what they be going through throughout their life and at home. So if you can connect with them on the court, off the court, and show them tough love and show them that you believe in them, but still you can be tough on them, I think that type of culture awfully lends to them running through a brick wall for you. It often lends to them, following you when they're not really sure if that's really the way they're supposed to do it. But they'll put their neck on the line for you because you have nurtured them, you have, given them a chance to have the ability to excel. And I think that's, and giving them opportunities. Whereas getting the kids to believe in themselves and the culture and buying, man, it's so hard, man. Like a lot of people talk about it and a lot of people fake it. The kids fake it. They know how to fake it. Your staff can fake it. But like when you truly have that type of culture, success is just going to come. It's a matter of time. And whether you win a championship or not, it really doesn't matter. It's about the things that I just pointed out. That's crucial to any program and culture.
Randy, I'll add this to it. Just hit me. You have built that culture when your kids call you, whether they got in trouble or they're not in trouble, and they need your help. And it doesn't matter. When your kids can look you in the eye and say, yeah, coach, I did that, because they trust you enough to know that, not necessarily that you're going to save them, but you're going to be honest with them and you're going to try to help them. I found that to be in every area of the world, that if they can't trust you with things that they can't trust anybody else with, and you probably gonna have some issues with him somewhere down the line.
Okay, I got another question. This is from a former teammate in Phoenix. He asked me, Randy, best player you played against in high school, college, and professional?
Me. It was me.
High school. Let's see. You know what? Jock Vaughn, I think, was tough. There was another kid named Stacy. Can't think of Stacy's last name, but he went to the University of Maryland. We played him kind of, I think, my freshman year in high school, AAU. He was incredible. College, man, there's so many good college players. I was hurt, so I didn't get to play against a lot of the guys that I like to, but maybe, I guess, Stackhouse. That was a good one when he was at Carolina. And professionally, I was very lucky, and you know this, to be in Phoenix to play against Jason Kidd every day, to then go to Seattle, play against Gary Payton every day in practice, and then be in Utah and play against John Stockton. They were the best at my position. Now, MJ and Akeem Olajuwon, they were just different, but they were the best at my position. Okay, guys, got some more questions. Coach Ross, how do you know what's the right first head coaching job to take?
Randy, you're fading out. You there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. You got a fuzz on your camera.
Let's see. Okay.
How do you know the first? There you go. You better. How do you know the first head coaching job to take? Well, the one that your spirit says an opportunity that you can get started. But I honestly, before you take your first head coaching job, man, dissect the community, dissect the administration, and dissect the history of that particular school in basketball. And there are some schools that basketball is a hobby. There are some schools that basketball is important. One of the things I did, for me, it was different, Russ. I just wanted to take a job from where I'd come from. The opportunity was I could always build a program, plus I'd been here. But for guys that didn't walk the path that I had, those are the things that I would suggest you do because it's totally different now.
Coach Ross, I'm going to add to that. And I'm going to give you the after that. The seat from assistant coach to head coaching job is 100 times different than being that seat next to the guy. And none of us, I don't care if they can sit up here and lie and try any coaching stuff, none of us are never ready for that next seat over until you experience it. You got to go through it. It don't matter. So I would say, whatever job you take, it's a learning experience, and you got to go through it. Very few guys get to stay at the same school forever, get to stay at the same college forever. It's just coaching is just a fickle business. All right, got a couple more questions.
Go ahead.
A couple here. Both you guys are AAU high school coaches. How do you separate your AAU program from your high school?
For me, I've been doing it so long in AAU, and actually, my better start was in AAU. I've separated my talent. AAU is a little bit different in the level that I coach. It's kind of like these are supposed to be the prima donnas, and it's kind of difficult because you're running around with a bunch of other kids from other places, and you have your own kid. But when you're honest with your kids about where they are and where they need to go, you really don't have that many problems. The thing, and again, it's easier for me to do it today than it probably was back then because I would have a good AAU team and I want them to be my high school team. Today is not like that. I've built a good enough relationship with coaches that I'm more want to make sure your kid goes back to you better than he left because I am a high school coach first. I'm not the average AAU coach. I'm just a high school coach that happened to be fortunate enough to work with a lot of talent all throughout the state. And I don't want to ever lose the trust with high school coaches, because I'm first and foremost a high school coach where I get a paycheck and where I impact more lives outside of basketball than I will ever do with AAU. So that's how I separated, Randy.
Okay, good. We got 5 more minutes, so we're going to wrap up in 5 minutes. I got a parent question, which is good to hear. Upperclassmen who participate in multiple sports, is this encouraged, or should the student athlete focus on crafting one particular sport when seeking athletic scholarship? Me personally, to the parents that asked this question, is I'm a huge fan of multi-sport athletes. I think guys play a sport, and when you start to concentrate on just one, now you got to be smart. If there's the next LeBron James, yeah, you know what? I don't know, maybe football is not the play. You just stay on basketball. But from just an average kid or a good to average or a really good player, I think kids should play multiple sports because you can get burned out. Somebody asked a burned out question last week's show, but I think it's important that kids get to play. They get to use different muscles. They get to let their mind get away from the one sport, concentrate on something else. And I would tell you what, if they have a chance later on in life to become a professional or anything, or even go to college, I know most college coaches love multi-sport athletes. Today, that's just it's in right now, and I think it's important.
Okay? Well, you know, Randy, and I have an experience on that. I had a kid came to my school specifically to play basketball. He ended up playing college football because I encouraged him because he was an athlete. Basketball players going on to the next level, I mean, is a little bit different. But when you get a kid that's an athlete or a kid that really doesn't have an identity completely yet, you encourage them to do everything. I've always done that. And I guess part of it is because I played everything. So I don't understand you not playing everything, you know. So next question, Randy.
Yep, so we got 2 minutes. This is a good one to end on with. Sorry I couldn't get to everybody. But one thing you guys know about coaching that you wish you had known when you started coaching. I'll handle this very quickly. But it's a 24-hour, 360-day job. It ain't a dull moment. As soon as you think you got it easy, you know your schedule, you know what's going on, something happened. And it could be with a kid. It can be with anybody. So, you know, it could be with one of your players. You got to go to their house, like Coach Dex say. You got to help them school-wise. I get my kids call me at 6 o'clock in the morning and say, let's go get some shots up. And you got to do it because you got to be there for them. That's the job you signed up for. We got 30 seconds. I'll let Dex run on when you wrap up.
Hey, look, Randy, you know, I'm not going to elaborate on the question. All I know is the one thing I did that's different today is I probably got to work harder than I did back in the beginning. So with that being said, Randy, I know you're about ready to wrap up. We probably could start a little earlier next week with more questions. I like the question thing because it takes us into a lot of other different areas. So we'll talk about that. But, man, I really enjoyed this. For those that's listening, Dex, I mean, it's not a popularity thing. It's about education, educating one another.